Hello everyone and welcome back to the NPC Dungeon. As you might know, this video is the final one in my series on planning and note-taking. I covered it from the DM's perspective first, but now I'm covering it from the player's perspective. As always, I'll leave a link and a card to the playlist these videos are on if you want to see more about it. Last week, it was planning from a player's perspective. This week, it's note-taking. This video is going to be divided into three main parts. First, I'll talk about why you should be taking notes. Second, I'll get into exactly what kinds of things you might want to take notes over. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about how you might want to go about doing it. It's a little bit different from my usual style, but I really think it fits the topic, so feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. I'm always curious to see what you all have to say. But with all that out of the way, I know this intro was dragged on a little longer than I expected, so let's get started and let's learn something. So obviously the main takeaway of this video is that I think you should be taking notes. But why? Why should you take notes in D&D? Well, the most obvious reason is so that you can keep track of the quest you're on and of the story. The last thing you want to do is end up forgetting the whole point of your adventure. But that's just an extreme example. It could be as simple as the location you have to go to, an NPC's name. A simple note can really go a long way in keeping the game on track. We may think that we'll remember these things, but honestly, you never know what you might forget. And that's another reason why you might want to take notes. We all have our own lives and we only play D&D once a week, so it's perfectly fine if you forget. Just make a note. Remember, this isn't a chore. You're not trying to memorize anything. I'm not saying to take pages and pages of notes if you don't enjoy that. Just jot something down really quick. Trust me, even if you don't enjoy taking notes and if you don't think it'll be very fun or whatever, the game will be a lot less fun if you don't, and if you're stuck straining to remember everything that happened last session. And lastly, taking notes just helps your DM too. For one thing, DMs aren't perfect. We forget too, and there's nothing more helpful than a player who can help out and remember something that happened before on the occasion that a DM might have just misplaced a note or something, as we do already have so many notes to keep track of as it is. Now, I'm not saying that DMs have an excuse to forget or that it's the player's job to keep track of everything in the world. No, not at all. We all do it together, so feel free to help out. Trust me, again, this game is usually a lot more fun if we all know what's going on and can help each other out. Remember, we want to create a welcoming and fun environment. What better way to do that than with a helpful note every now and then? It also just really shows the DM that you're not only interested and invested, but also grateful. Your DM puts, or at least hopefully puts, a lot of work into this, and there's no better way to really show your appreciation than by taking notes, remembering what's going on, and being active and engaged in the game. By the way, if you want to know more about being active in the game and being a good player, I'll leave a link and a card to my player advice playlist, of which this video is a part. And on the opposite side, if you never know what's going on, if you forget every detail, if you don't know where you're at in the story, you're basically putting all of that hard work that your DM puts into the game to waste. And all of this can be solved by simply just taking a few notes. But what kind of stuff should you be taking notes over? The answer to this question is very similar to my answer I gave in my video on DM note-taking. I'll leave a link in a card if you like, but in that video, I said that you might want to take a note on anything that you think might be important enough to come into play later on. And the same is basically true here. Here's an example. Does the party need to go to a certain city? Write down the name. Are there dangers in that city? Maybe write them down so you know what to look out for. Are there dangers on the way? Maybe write that down too. This helps you remember it, but it also helps you plan. Obviously, the more information you have, the better you can plan, and the more you write down, the more you'll remember, and the better, hopefully, the better your plans will be. Just like how the DM writes down their plans, you can write down yours as well. Do you want to try to pull off a certain maneuver in combat? Write it down. Do you want to ask an NPC an important question? Just write it down. It takes no time at all, and it's a huge help later on. And if you want to know more about playing as a player, I'll leave a link and a card for that video specifically as well. I'll also leave a link and a card for more DM advice on planning if you want to see that one as well. In the same vein, you might even want to take note on whatever your current theories are. If your DM is running a more mysterious kind of plot, it could definitely come in handy to set aside a certain section of your notes just for theories and ideas. But there's an also more player-specific reason why players specifically might want to take notes that doesn't revolve simply around planning or being ready. As players, there might be a lot of lore or NPCs or what have you that you might want to remember. And just like I said earlier, you never know what you might forget. It's just plain helpful to have this stuff written down so it's less for you to try to memorize. And again, this game is usually a lot more fun if you have a good, clear idea of what's going on, or at least of what you know in the case of more mysterious campaigns. So, we've already talked about what you might want to take notes on and what kinds of things to look out for, but next up is how you might want to go about actually doing it. Of course, some people take pages and pages of very detailed notes that are organized and color-coded and everything else, and more power to them. There are some people who just really enjoy note-taking, and if that's how you have fun, I say go for it. But I'm not going to require that much, I'll be honest. It's not that fun for me. I mentioned the same thing in my video on DM session notes. I'm just not a huge fan of note-taking. By the way, I'll leave a link in a card for that video if you like, because I said something in that video that I'm going to kind of repeat in this one, and it is to be concise. It can be very easy and just as simple as a sentence or a sentence fragment. For example, you can just say, watch out for wolves down River Road, or something like that. You don't have to go all out. You know yourself, and you know how best to word it so that you'll remember it and be able to tell what it means later on if you have to look back at it. And for one last little point here, I recommend organizing your notes. You may want a section for locations, a section for NPCs, a section for lore, and a section for quests, but that's just one way you might organize it. Honestly, it can be difficult to know what kinds of sections you'll need out the gate, so that's why I like to take notes on my phone. Some people do it on the computer. That way I can move things around and make new sections as I need to. But that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it useful. Feel free to come back next week where I'll talk about how to play little tricks on your players and how to do it the right way and how not to do it, or I'll tell the story of a Kenku detective that I played pretty recently. Feel free to check out this week's story coming out tomorrow. It's all about an encounter that I did not expect to happen, but that I had a lot of fun running. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, let's learn something.